2021. So who better to be leading this webinar than the fantastic Fil McIntyre, who I've known for many, many years, thinking back the days when he worked for Inclusive Education. So Fil has such a wide knowledge, and he's a great assistive technologist, so it's great to have him here. And it's such an interesting description: technology and marginal gains, small changes make a big difference. And for those of us working in assistive technology, we know that's so true. So the session lasts for 20 minutes, and if you have any questions, put them in the chat pane and we'll answer the questions at the end of the session, okay? So thanks. So Fil, I'll just hand over to you, okay, and let you take the reins of the session. Thank you.
Great, thanks Craig, and no pressure then from that introduction there. Thank you. I'm inclined to go over time, so I'm just going to pile straight in with minimal introduction. But I'm going to do a really quick intro to who I currently work for, which is TechAbility. I manage the TechAbility service and I'm the AT lead. And we do all this stuff on the screen: webinars, consultation, assessments, standards, you name it. You can find more on techability.org.uk. We're mainly supporting further education currently, though we've done some work in supporting mainstream schools with assistive technology. We've also produced in the last sort of year and a half or so what we call the TechAbility Standards. And this might be something that you could be interested in. It's a free resource, but it gives you a chance to measure your assistive technology provision and just have a look at what you currently provide and how you provide it and whether you've got everything in place. And we're seeing this really, a lot of organizations have used this to find out where their gaps are maybe, and to look at their provision with assistive technology for their students and say, oh, hang on, we might not have this particular area sorted. And it's a bit of a bold claim, but we say it can help you possibly get ready for an inspection to make sure you're not missing anything. So have a look at that. It's a free resource. I'll give you my email address at the end, and if you've got any questions, feel free to get in touch. So marginal gains. This is a little bit of a thought experiment, and later on, I'm just giving you pre-warning, there will be some maths, maybe even tending to physics, but I've made it as approachable and accessible as I can. So you might have heard of this theory before when talking about cycling. So the Sky team used this theory of marginal gains to great effect. They got a new team manager, and he said, right, what we're going to do is we're going to concentrate on the tiny little differences we can make to the team and to the bikes, and those tiny little differences will mount up. So what they did is they did things like managed to shave a few grams off a chain set, or they managed to find a better lubricant for their chains, or they made their tires more sticky by rubbing them with alcohol or something like that. I don't know the difference. We're not talking about cycling today, but the point being that turned them from being not a very competitive team to, within a couple of years, being the world's leading cycling team, and they won all the major cycling events. And this was accredited to this guy Dave Brailsford, who would put this in place, and he put all of these tiny changes mounted up. So it wasn't that's pretty high level. My kind of attitude to marginal gains, I'm a distinctly amateur cyclist, and I prefer this kind of approach. I'd much rather go for a cycle ride where there's a pub and a pie and a pint at the end than cycle hundreds of miles through France. But we can apply these kind of high level things to just normal stuff as well. You know, for me, it's more like choosing a coat without a flappy hood, maybe eating less cake and eating less pies to reduce a beer belly and therefore being able to cycle faster. So we don't have to see it, these marginal gains theory, in the really high end of things. We can apply it quite basically to a lot of stuff that we do in life, and I want to obviously apply that to assistive technology. So there's another interesting person who's written about this a lot called James Clear, and he's applied it to things like changing people's habits and stuff like that. But basically this graph gives you an idea of what you can do. If you're 1% better every day and you multiply that by 300 or put that to the power of 365, you get this graph that swoops upwards. And my theory is that if we apply these tiny differences in assistive technology, we can reduce the effort for our learners, we can increase their accuracy. Importantly, we can improve their confidence with the work that they produce. And all of these tiny little gains can add up to massive improvements over time. Now, theoretically, this kind of makes sense, and I don't think I'm saying anything radical here. If you think I'm saying something radical, then fire in the chat and we'll deal with it at the end. But I want to give you a couple of examples, and I've broken this down using the example of word prediction software, which I hope that many of you are familiar with. So the fact that you start typing and a suggested word comes up and you don't have to then type the whole word, and this can be really beneficial. We see it anecdotally. It can be really beneficial for students who can't type a lot or need help with long words. So there's a couple of examples here, one you pay for, like Key, but then the built-in Windows accessibility option of text suggestions. And it shows you here some of the saves. These have just been running in the background when I've been demonstrating them, and it shows I've reduced a certain amount of keystrokes and it's auto-completed some words for me, and that's a reduction. But if we break that down to possibly look at what that might look like. So here comes the maths bit, and I did pre-warn you, but my maths and physics isn't great. It's definitely high school, but this is what we're dealing with. So if we're talking about force and energy, we need to figure out how much we can save to get it into that marginal gain. What are we going to benefit out of using something like word prediction or text suggestions? So a measure of force is a Newton. Stay with me here. And if you hold an apple in your hand, the force of that apple, the force of it rather than the weight, pushing down on your hand is 1 Newton. So it's not much, it's a tiny amount. But the feeling of that, just to give you, relate it to reality, if you put a normal apple in your hand, that's about 1 Newton. The other thing we need to know the measurement of is energy, how much energy we burn when we're expending that force, when we're using that force. And that's measured in joules. And this is, apologies, another fruit. The energy, when you to burn 1 joule of energy, if you lift a medium-sized tomato, this is not my measure, I've got this from a highly scientific website. If you lift a medium-sized tomato up 1 meter, you've burned 1 joule of energy. So it's not much, that force of lifting that tomato, or it might not be much to your eye. If someone suffers from fatigue or someone has a complex disability, then that might be a lot of energy compared to the amount that they're burning or able to burn during a day. So this is where the marginal gains things come in. If we then look at how do we apply that to what we're talking about, which is saving energy from typing. Each key press burns about, takes the force of 1.4 newtons, roughly 1.5 pressing down apples, if you like. When you're pressing a key on a normal keyboard, to get the key from the top to the bottom, that takes about 1.4 newtons. The key travel, the distance from the top to the bottom, is 2.5 millimeters. And to work out what energy we have used to press 1 key on a keyboard, we need to times those 2 things together. We times our newtons by our meters, which is 0.00025 of a meter, 2.5 millimeters. So essentially, in summary, to press 1 key on your keyboard, if you've got a normal keyboard, it takes about 0.0035 of a joule. So a tiny amount compared to lifting up a tomato. Doesn't sound much, doesn't sound like a lot of energy we would need to save. But again, let's think tiny amounts, marginal gains. Once we scale that up to typing, if a student or a learner has to type a 500-word assignment, about a side of A4, they're going to be doing about 3,000 key presses. I'm including the spaces here. So 3,000 key presses, 3,000 little burns of energy. Times that by that tiny amount of energy burnt, and we've suddenly got 10.5 joules, or 10 tomato lifts, which again doesn't sound much, but if you've suffer from fatigue, or if you've got issues with expending a lot of energy, that can be a lot of energy used. And that doesn't even include the amount of energy you might burn moving between keys. I've really taken this back to straightforward. So you would also, if you're moving around the keyboard, if you've got your fingers moving between the keys, you're going to burn even more energy. You've also got to keep your arms up over that keyboard. That burns more energy. And the longer you do that, the more energy you're going to burn. So, but at a basic, if we're typing a 500-word essay, at the very least, we're going to burn 10.5 joules or 10 tomato lifts. I promise I'll stop mentioning tomatoes eventually. And the marginal gain effect of that is that if we can use something like word prediction to reduce key presses by even as little as 25%, by a quarter, we've saved 750 key presses in the course of that 500-word document that we've written. Again, times that by our joules, we've saved 2.6 tomato lifts. Apply that to the marginal gains, scale it up. Think about that graph we saw back at the beginning of going up exponentially. In the course of a week, we're saving 13 tomato lifts. And in the course of a month, we've saved 52. Now, this is all really basic. And like I say, it's a bit of a thought experiment. And I've got a warning at the end to maybe not quote me on all this maths, because someone's going to pull it apart. But all of these things add up. And as Paul's saying in the chat, there's a lot of simple things that can make a difference. So if you fix your device so it doesn't slide all over the place, you're saving a tiny bit each time. And all of these things add into this, not just the student's energy saving, but their confidence. If it works every time, if they're not fatigued when they're using it, they're more likely to keep using it. So if we reduce that, just to scale that up again, if we manage to have great word prediction software, and the more you use word prediction software, the better it gets. So if that student uses it more over time, it will hopefully learn their patterns, learn what words they use. We could maybe reduce it by 50%. Then we're saving 1,500 key presses. And these things just multiply. 5.5 joules, 26 tomato lifts, 105 tomato lifts over the course of a month. Again, it doesn't seem like much, but it could be the difference. Now, I'm sure a lot of you might work with young people, students who will get fatigued over the course of a day. We're not even talking about a month here sometimes. We're talking about someone starting in the morning, having quite a lot of energy. By the time lunchtime comes or the afternoon, they really can't complete tasks to the same extent that they can in the morning. And whatever we can do by putting technology in place to reduce that energy burn, we're hopefully going to increase their energy and increase their outputs and their ability to do tasks. Now, we're not even including in here either the mental energy, the thinking energy, which obviously burns an awful lot too. So, other examples of where this could be useful things like mouse movement. So Paul's already mentioned using a joystick. Mouse movements, I think, take an awful lot of energy, but there's some things we can do to take tiny amounts of energy out of that, and these will accumulate. So there's things in the Windows mouse menu about snap to, and this is something that means as a menu pops up, like the little one on the screen, the mouse pointer jumps straight to the buttons, OK, cancel, or apply. So I don't have to move the mouse across the desk to get to the thing I want to click on. Again, we're saving moving the mouse a few centimeters each time, but over the course of the day, the week, the month, that's a shorter distance traveled, therefore less effort. We can also do things like adjust the pointer speed. And what this does is if you get it right for a learner, if the pointer speed is slowed down or sped up so they make less errors as they're moving their mouse around, it's just less effort because they'll miss things less. They'll get to the thing they want to do with the mouse a lot more quickly and therefore burn less energy. Another key example, jumping away from kind of a Windows machine, is thinking about iOS or iPad use. And something like text size. So the default on your screen at the minute, this is how the text looks on an iPad if you don't change any settings. It's okay, it's quite easy to read, but if I turn on bold text, the difference between those two things, I'll just go back again, it's not much, but it's a lot easier to read, I think, that bold text, and it might stop someone having to strain to read the text and get it a lot more easily. If as well I turn on another setting in iOS, which increases the contrast of the text against the background. This one's a bit harder to see. I'll go back again, but look at the grey text underneath the main menus. So around about here, this grey text. When I turn on increase contrast, that becomes more readable. And during the course of a day using an iPad, that should really make a big difference for some learners. I would say for everyone. Just having all those things turned on, I don't think anyone is going to complain and say, oh, hang on, the text is a bit too bold. It's a bit too easy to read. In my opinion, these should be just set as default on an iPad, but they try and make things look stylish, don't they? And then we have to go in and change all the settings. But making these things easier to read just means fewer errors. Fewer errors means less time taken to read the word. It means less effort as well for that individual. We shouldn't be having barriers in learners' way just to be able to read some things that are on the screen within the apps that we use. So, what else? I want some ideas from you now, just for a minute or so. Chat box is open. Any other settings or changes you can make, hardware or software, that you would see as being a marginal gain? Changing something tiny that could add up over time. So your chat box should be on the right of your screen. If you click the bubble, you should be able to just type into there. And any ideas from you about things that could be changed? I'm not going to give you too long because there's a terrible thing as radio silence. Okay, yep, great one, Craig. Large mouse pointer really helps. Again, nobody complains that the mouse pointer is too easy to see. Separating out delete letter and delete word for eye gaze so you don't select the wrong one. Yep, excellent. Paul going high level on us there with the eye gaze example. But again, that could be really important. Face recognition, yep, no need for putting passwords in. Keyboard shortcuts, oh, I like that, Barbara. I'm a big fan of keyboard shortcuts. You're saving energy by just not moving to the mouse and back every time, if you can just do everything on the keyboard when your hands are there already. Setting speak immediately to the right of the message window so you can see it and select it immediately. Yep, great one. Okay, I'm going to move on slightly but keep them coming in, but I'm just keeping an eye on time, and I don't want to get in trouble with Craig. The other thing that we need to think about is the less obvious marginal gains. So coming right back to our Sky Team example here, they didn't just look at the things on the bike that I talked about earlier that could be changed. They did things around the cyclist. So things like electrically heated overshorts to make sure people's muscles were working effectively. Riders were taught how to wash their hands. This is way before COVID, so that they didn't pick up bugs and colds. They got a surgeon in to show people how to wash their hands like surgeons do. They painted the inside of the truck team white so they could spot bits of dust so they don't get in the bikes, things like that. And these things we can think about when we're applying to assistive technology, about all that stuff around the learner. So any ideas for things which aren't software or hardware, but that could be a marginal gain that would get our learners, decrease the amount of energy that our learners have to burn, essentially, to be able to do what they need to do. So chat box is open again. Any ideas about that stuff around the software and hardware people might benefit from? Positioning, yep, great one, Craig. That should be the basis of everything. If we haven't got people sitting right or standing right, whatever they're doing. Consistent staff working with pupils, yep, making sure people know what they're doing. Sleep, we all need more of that, don't we? Giving enough time, yeah. Definitely, Paul. That's probably a whole webinar in itself, but stepping back, wearing their glasses, Jenny's talking from experience, posture and routine, coloured and coded bands and symbols on equipment to make quick responses. Oh yeah, I like that. And time to learn and a chance to process. Yeah, all excellent ideas and things that you're obviously hopefully putting into practice as well. I've just made a list of things that kind of occurred to me and have also been useful to me, and a lot of it is around, some of it's organization, a lot of it's around positioning, comfort, making sure people are happy and comfortable. Clean screens always a good one, especially with touch screens and iPads. I've seen horrendous issues with screens that are just so dirty that I don't know how anybody can see it. And that also applies, Lucille, to clean glasses. Yeah, how can people operate what we're doing if they can't actually see what they're meant to be doing on the screen? And I've just snuck in there touch typing at the end because it doesn't apply to really hardware or software, but as a skill, there's a lot of research to show that pupils' effectiveness and accuracy with spelling and production of documents increases once they've learned to touch type. It's a bit of a slow process, but it can often make all the difference, and that what's the word, automaticity kicks in. Okay, sorry, I'm going to move on because time's... So thinking back on this gains graph, this is what we've been talking about: reducing effort, increasing accuracy, improving confidence. All of these things can add up. So I picked out that one example of word prediction, and then an example of mouse use, and an example of text size and text clarity. What about if we added all those things together? I'm sure you can probably think of plenty of students who would benefit from maybe all three of those things. So how steep does that graph go up once we start adding those things together and not just having one of them? A few notes of caution. This is me getting towards the end. There's no more maths, I promise. Please don't consider these calculations in this presentation as research. It's totally back of the envelope stuff to illustrate the point, to say that once we narrow it down, we are just to prove that we are saving tiny bits of energy that all add up. Please also don't think about, we've put some of these things in place, we've set it up for the learner, and we can set it and forget it. We should always have a review point in the calendar once we've made any sort of intervention. That date should go in. Are we coming back in a week's time because we know, or are we coming back in a month's time, to make sure that that learner is still benefiting, or whether things need tweaking. And when it comes to stuff like word prediction and any kind of those kind of changes, we have to do that to make sure it's still running efficiently. As any AT assessment really should be ongoing, and we should always have those review points. Right, slightly longer than promised, apologies for that, but my contact details are on the screen if you wanted to get in touch with me. If not, that's fine. I can take any questions now. I think it's just in the chat, isn't it,
Yeah,
Craig?
that was brilliant, Phil. Really, really interesting. Thank you. I'll see my keyboards in a completely different light. I'll just see it as one large tomato in future.
Good, good.
Do you think if I typed all night I would lose some weight? Do you think that would help towards my
I,
weight
I,
loss?
can't, I can't promise that. It's not a
Okay,
diet plan.
right.
No.
It's not. I've never seen it part of a diet plan before, but but that was fantastic. Thank you. Yes. So if there's any questions for Phil, please pop them into the chat, and we'll get Phil to answer them. Give a few minutes to do that. And just to let you know, folks, this is the last time we'll be using Collaborate. In the next term, we'll be using Teams. So please feel free to join us for our next session of really exciting and informative webinars after the new year. So great. Laura saying this has been brilliant. Shirley, good stuff. Good visuals. Like the heated bike shorts, yes. That's Of course, Phil, it would be quite good to cycle around France and then go for a pie and a pint as well. That would be quite good too, I think.
I guess so. Probably in
Yep.
France, it'd probably be more sophisticated than a pie and a pint.
It'd be le pie, no doubt.
Le pie.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, I think it's good sometimes to take these things on, and I've been wittering about marginal gains for about a year now, and this has been useful for me because it's the first time I've gone, oh, actually, I need to break this down and see whether it could actually have any basis in fact, rather than just saying marginal gains, isn't it great?
And the thing that really struck me, Phil, is that the things you covered are just stuff that's built into the systems these days, isn't it? It's just stuff that's in Windows and has been there for a long, long time. Stuff that's in the iPad. So you're not having to go to extra expenditure to make these marginal gains.
No, and we're in a golden age. Should we say, maybe not a golden age, a silver age of this stuff just being built into technology. As Craig said, him and me have been doing this a long time, and we remember when to get some of the things we've been talking about today, you needed 2 or 3 different bits of software, and if you wanted it for free, you'd have had to really hunt around, or you'd had to pay lots of money. So having this stuff built into iPads, Windows, Chromebooks, if you're Chromebook users, there's a lot of add-ons that can make this stuff happen for free rather than having to buy extra software in.
Laura's asking, are there ways to further reduce energy needed for using a mounted or tablet on a wheelchair?
I would avoid that. This sounds a bit Father Ted, but I'd say that's an occupational therapy matter, Laura. It's probably about efficiency and having things mounted in exactly the right way. And it would be remiss of me to probably comment on that, but I would say at the earliest possible stage, get an OT involved and start looking at those angles and whether they're right. Oh, already involved. Good. Well, multidisciplinary working. You're there already. You're on it. Great.
Well, if there are no more questions for Phil, I think we'll just close the session. And thanks again, Phil. That was great. Well, yes, some Paul saying separate pointing device last week. Met a learner of DMD, and he liked the mini thumb controlled. Yeah, they're great, those little mini thumb ones. And I hope it's not too early, but just to wish everyone a happy holiday and thanks for all your support. You too, EA, thanks for coming along. And have a happy tomato Christmas. That's, I think, is the message.
Is that your vegetarian alternative, Craig?
Yes, that's right.
I haven't calculated how much energy it takes to lift a turkey, sorry.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, bye. Thanks, Phil. Bye.
Cheers.